Reason why this lab is relevant, according to me, is that masculinity and femininity exists in all of us. Um, the problem is that we don't necessarily acknowledge both the elements in us, and also in the process, we hold stereotypes, and also in the process, we hold distortions of both of these elements in us. So, this lab is for anybody who wants to get in touch with the deepest part of their potential, the deepest part of their wholeness, and experience the full flow of the creative life force.
Why do you say that?
Because when we are not acknowledging the lack of balance in us, then um, it is actually strangling, restricting, withholding all of these aspects. And what did it do for me is I felt that many of the insights I already hold inside me, and but the group, I experienced it as a very safe place. So in a way, the co-travelers also made me. Uh, I can dare to say this statement. Also made me feel that if I don't run along with them, I'll get left behind. So I experienced this little bit of a push to actually start doing things differently rather than holding things in my head. And with this first baby steps, I feel that patterns inside the head will change, which will help me take the steps in the life outside.
So your competitiveness helped.
Okay, I think in today's world there are new forms of new expressions of masculinity, new explorations of femininity emerging. Some of them are very disturbing. We do see a lot of violent assaults on women. And having worked with women for a long time, I've also realized that there are new kinds of conflicts at home as the structure of family itself is changing. So the fabric of the family, the fabric of the workplace, the fabric of public spaces are all undergoing tremendous change. And in understanding these changes, gender is one of the most important lenses that we need to use. Apart from understanding class, caste, religion, urbanization, globalization, etc. But in all those as well, how gender is manifesting is an important insight that we need in our civilizational journey. So to me, talking about gender at this context of time in Indian society is very, very important. And I'm glad that such a lab explores this concept.
Is it relevant for the themes that you're talking about? For instance, we are talking about women, violence, etc., etc. How does this lab help, if at all?
I think that the lab is not just about violence, it's about the ways our identity is formed, which in turn then determines how we relate to each other, whether it's in intimate marital relationships or with our children or with our parents or with our colleagues or with people in authority or with the leaders of the nation, dealing with authority, with power, with notions of equality, of inferiority, and all these notions are colored by gender. I don't think one can ever look at power or authority or equality without looking at it through a gendered lens. And so for me, a lab on gender isn't just about gender relations. It's about understanding social structure, conflict, society, internal conflict. One can also look at conflicts between countries from a gendered lens. So for me, gender is a very powerful lens to look at the history as well as the future. But the notion of sexuality is not just about the body, but about the politics of sexuality and how we hold it and understand it. And so I think sexual expression or sexual acts are the last manifestation of how we understand morality, identity, power. And the lab begins to explore these. There isn't enough time to go very deep into all these. I come from a sector where there's a lot of attention right now on alternative sexualities, so much so that tensions in the heterosexual relationships aren't always given as much space. So the whole sexuality discourse seems to be taken over by the LGBT communities to some extent, maybe rightly so because historically they have been marginalized. But in that process, sufficient attention to new kinds of tensions and nuances in heterosexualities itself and masculinities itself seems to be getting relegated to the margins, and I think we need to integrate both.
This lab actually, addresses the boundaries of the gendered spaces the way we hold this in our mind.
I think the lab does begin to um, address it. Again, I'm saying that there are many people, many voices that need to come into each lab, and so um, going into each particular dimension may not be possible. What I would like to see really is, and this coming from a sociological perspective, which I have been talking to Ashok and Sharpri about before, is for me, gender does not exist in isolation.
Absolutely.
And gender is something that we study in sociology as an intersection. So how gender plays out is always in the intersection of our class backgrounds, our cultural backgrounds, our racial backgrounds, our caste backgrounds, all that. Or even our disabilities, our sexual orientations, our ethnicities, all these color how we internalize gender, because we are not gendered separately. We are socialized by all these money forces, and in that, gender is one of the structures of our socialization. And I find that if we really want to do that, then new other frameworks will also have to be presented, which might complicate the lab, but it is also important that the fact that other frameworks or other processes are happening is important. For example, for me, um, a Brahmin woman's understanding of her sexuality is very much colored by the caste codes that she has received and the patriarchy of that particular community, as much different from how a woman from a Dalit background would experience or understand her body and how she would offer it and use it. So there are these issues which we I hope Sumedhas will explore, and I think this is a very good beginning in that direction.